And we are the Non-Prophets. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Jeff D. Our co-host is Denis Loubet.
Howdy.
Our producer, Russell Glasser.
Hello.
Today's opening music, once again, is Battle Without Honor or Humanity by Tokomatsu Hotai from the Kill Bill Volume 1 soundtrack.
Eventually,
we are live.
you won't really have to say that anymore.
I guess. But we've been doing the show for 2 years, and having a different song at the opening of each one. I'm really used to identifying it every time now.
Okay, carry on.
Okay. It might be a bad habit that I'll have to break myself of. We are, live, May 22, 2004, and this is the show. Hi, everyone. I see there's a giant crowd in the chat room.
30 people.
Awesome.
30 people. Welcome.
When I signed on.
Welcome to everyone there.
Cool.
Thanks for stopping by. Thank you for listening to the program. And thank you goes out to the Atheist Network for their hosting of our show. We appreciate the opportunity to be here for you, the people. Should we do some news?
Oh, sure, why not?
Well, let me start.
Sure.
Let me tell you about something that's going on in Nigeria that I wish would go on here.
Oh, are they trying to get you to send them money so they can free up those accounts?
This is actually something else going on in Nigeria. Not the guys trying to tell me that they need me to launder some money for them. Nigeria clamps down on televangelists.
Boggle?
Chris Oyakilome is pastor of Christ Embassy, one of Nigeria's largest Pentecostal congregations. His church runs 30-minute slots on most major television channels daily. His programs often show revival meetings in sold-out stadiums and halls where the lame walk, the blind receive sight, and people hitherto crippled by terminal ailments leap for joy as they receive instantaneous healing.
Wow.
For years, televangelists have been projecting wild claims into Nigerian homes, uncensored and unhindered. But now, a new law means all preachers making claims about miraculous healing are required to provide verifiable evidence that a miracle has taken place.
Ooh.
Now, doesn't that just seem entirely reasonable?
Well, yeah, except that you know how miracles are. They always shrivel up when somebody is being skeptical around them.
Yeah. Well, Nigeria beats the FCC. Cool.
Well, you would think, though, that this is basically a reasonable demand, right?
Yeah.
It's like any other demand for, truth in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, the embattled televangelists were handed a brief respite as a Lagos High Court directed authorities not to begin enforcing the new rules pending a legal challenge by 2 Christians.
Oh.
I wonder on what basis that legal challenge is.
Right. Can't they prove their religion?
What is the issue?
What are they saying?
Are there miracles happening or not? If there are miracles, it shouldn't be a problem. If there aren't miracles, then they've been caught lying.
Yeah.
Right? I guess perhaps they're going to sue for their right to lie. If they lose the case, preachers face a tough test. They will be required to produce a doctor's report on the patient's condition before healing took place, as well as video evidence at the point of healing, and another doctor's report confirming that the earlier diagnosed condition was no longer present.
Wow, I find that eminently reasonable.
It just seems... it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
The furor began when the Nigeria Broadcasting Commission, NBC, which regulates broadcasting, announced that such programs would not air unless they provided proof of miracles. The ban has provoked a furious debate and polarized the nation. Millions of Nigerians, especially in the South, identify themselves as Pentecostal Christians. It is largely from these ranks that the TV programs draw their viewers. But condemnation has also come from other sources than the church. The Nigeria Labor Congress and many civil liberties groups suspect that the restrictions are meant to inhibit freedom of expression. Now, what the hell
way?
is that? How is it inhibiting freedom of expression to insist that when you express a thing that you are saying is true, you can in fact show that it's true?
Freedom of expression read as freedom to lie.
That, I guess so.
Yeah.
But, I've heard that kind of defense of this sort of thing before, and unfortunately it was from Wendy Kaminer in the pages of Free Inquiry magazine, arguing that people should not be going after like fortune tellers because it's a free expression issue. But I don't see how it's a free expression issue. It's not. Right? It is a truth in advertising issue.
Being free doesn't mean
it's a fraud issue.
Right, because it's a commercial thing.
Right.
It's like that now infamous, I think, Donald Rumsfeld quote where when the looting started in Iraq, he said, well, in a free society, people are free to do bad things. Which, of course,
really?
They're not.
No, they're not, actually. You're not free to do bad things.
Yeah, well,
I've just thought of an angle by which maybe that argument makes a certain amount of sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a tricky one, right? If somebody argued that, well, we're just putting on a show, we're not selling a product, right? We're just putting on a show, and the show is these miraculous healings. Well, then it is just entertainment.
Right.
Comedy.
But that's a lie, Pee-wee. Because it's not just a show. We know that...
They expect you to believe it.
That these programs are about getting donations.
Right. They expect you to believe it and respond accordingly with your pocketbook.
Right.
Right.
And the same thing goes for fortune tellers. They expect... They're telling you what is going to happen in the future.
It's called fraud.
I would tend to say, that the only argument I can think of that you could possibly bring to bear is bogus.
Does it mitigate it, in your opinion, if it says in teeny tiny print, the following events are fictional or are meant for entertainment purposes only?
No. Because I think it takes larger letters than that in order to get the message across when we're talking about an area in which a lot of people actually believe. Yeah. Like, there's no warning message that comes up when we sat down to watch the last 20 minutes of Van Helsing, Dennis and I did. We went earlier and the bulb burnt out.
Halfway through the movie.
And the manager came in and said, folks, it's going to take 20 minutes to change the bulb, so, here's free passes to compensate you out of the theater. So we went back. We saw the rest of it. There was no warning label at the start of the film saying, the monsters depicted in these films are just products of Hollywood special effects artists.
That usually happens at the end of the show. Where it says,
Oh, nothing.
At the end of all movies.
Any resemblance to persons living or dead.
Purely coincidental. So
but that's not
fiction.
But that's
clearly states.
Okay, but all right, but like magical things happened in that movie.
Oh, sure.
There's no warning label that says, and none of the supernatural things portrayed in this film are actually real things, that they're all just special effects, because everybody understands.
Right, it's fiction.
There's no need for any kind of a warning label.
Ooh, Wicked Pilot has a great point. Can faith healers be sued for malpractice like real doctors? Well, the answer is of course not. But, I mean...
It should be.
If there's something real going on...
What constitutes malpractice for a faith healer?
That's kind of the point.
He said he was going to cure your kidney ailment, but instead, one of your kidneys explodes?
Can you be sued for malpractice if you're not a doctor?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, doctors have some sort of actual ethical code which is enforced, whereas faith healers
have none.
Do not.
Well, doctors kind of have an ethical code that's enforced. Apparently, our story that we did last time, right? Where they're allowed not to treat whoever they want for whatever reason.
Well, that was a state where they were trying to pass a law to say that.
Yeah.
But I mean,
as far as I know, that law has not been passed.
Right.
Just by having malpractice suits, our legal system recognizes that there is a difference between legitimate doctors and illegitimate doctors. Whereas if you go to a faith healer, you're pretty much on your own.
Right. They can make whatever wild claims they want.
Right. But my whole point was...
Is fraud a freedom of expression issue? I don't think so.
Right. Getting back to where we were, the point that I was trying to make was those little disclaimer messages, their only purpose to being there is because there's a serious risk that some people might take what they're seeing seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And the more likely it is that people are going to take it seriously, I think the bigger the message needs to be,
Right.
And the more it needs to be accompanied by, flashing lights and sirens,
I hardly think that's sufficient. I think the box should bear a large red label.
Warning, lark vomit. For you Monty Python fans out there.
That's right.
All right. So the Nigeria Labor Congress is concerned this is meant to inhibit freedom of expression. Quote, "It is wrong for NBC to assume they can protect us from the kind of information we hear as if we are babies," says NLC President Abraham Oshimole. "If the government succeeds in this trend, our democracy would be weaker." How is democracy weakened by insisting that when somebody claims that they can do a miraculous healing, that they're obligated to show that they can do a miraculous healing? How does facilitating lying help democracy?
Yeah, well, I mean, democracy is like science. I mean, it relies on two things. Science basically relies on a certain openness to new things and a skepticism that those new things are very likely wrong.
Right.
Democracy relies on being able to vote, but it also relies on people having a clue what they're voting on. Having some...
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, actually, that people get angry thinking that you're stifling their rights when you say something is stupid.
Right.
I mean, you should be allowed to vote on things, but but there should also be a readily available opposing viewpoint that lets you know, hey, this thing might be stupid.
Yeah. The labor union accuses the regulatory authorities of trying to create a monopoly for government-owned broadcast corporations. The new rules and licensing fees require private stations to pay almost twice as much as the publicly owned ones. So what they're saying, okay, so here's an angle for the non-religious people to be concerned, right?
Right.
They're just looking for, those people are concerned about a separate issue, which is government control of the media.
Sounds like a power play.
It sounds like what they're doing is leaping on the miracle-proof bandwagon,
right,
in order to get the support of religious people for their cause, which is a much more valid one.
Mm.
The ban on miraculous claims affects the Christian organizations responsible for almost all such broadcasts on television.
But it's not a ban on miraculous claims. That's the thing.
Well, it is. Yes, it is. Right?
No,
in effect, it is.
They can make as many claims as they want. They just have to back them up.
But that sentence means there is no proving these things.
Right.
That is what that sentence. Therefore, it's a ban.
They admit they have no.
It is in effect a ban.
Right.
There are a few Muslim broadcasts, but they don't offer the spectacle of the miraculous cure. One of the private stations that has been affected by the ban released a statement claiming that the Commission's directive, quote, robs Christians of their rights. There it is. Robs them of their rights.
The right to lie. We have the right to lie.
Yeah, the right to call stuff miracles, right? To do things and claim that the things we are doing are miracles.
Right.
Without having to prove it. Boy, if that is a right that they do have, they frickin' need to be robbed of it.
Yeah.
I don't have that right.
They exercising it right.
It's not like anybody else on the planet has the right to make some big bald-faced lie and not be questioned on it.
Well,
that
sure
right
they do.
Exist.
It just depends on what forum it's made in.
What do you mean?
I mean, like...
Well, okay, sure. If it is entertainment. If it's entertainment.
Yep. Well,
although
apparently governments too. So
no, they don't have that right. Right? They get investigated.
Yeah, that's true.
And hopefully those lies get exposed. Although the NBC has been careful to state that it has not banned religious broadcasts outright, only unverifiable claims about miracles. Most of those affected do not see the difference.
Oh, God.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah.
That is freaking hilarious. So anyway, that's great. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, your irony meter gets heated up over this. Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah. If you can't see the difference between being required to prove your miracle claims and being put out of business, then that should tell you something about your business.
Mm-hmm.
I have more.
Man, I wish our government would do something like that.
Don't you?
That'd be kind of cool.
Don't you? The FCC could maybe take up the call, right? Maybe the FCC could impose a rule like that? Because the FCC, they're such wonderful guys. Right. They do that for us.
Yeah,
sure.
Not while the Republicans are in office.
No.
Okay, I cannot do a better segue to your thing here.
Oh, yeah.
That.
By the way,
I need to pick up on
these things.
Okay.
And speaking of the FCC, Eric Idle of Monty Python fame.
Works for the FCC?
No, he's got a new song out called the FCC song, oddly enough.
Huh.
And you can download it. Huh?
Isn't he British?
Yes, he is.
Wouldn't that be the BBC?
No, he's talking about the FCC.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Does he live
and
in
no uncertain
British
terms.
people are all over American politics these days. Just look in The Guardian.
Yeah, and you can download it at www.pythonline.com
yeah.
/plugs/idle.
Huh.
And
did he not also sing "I Bet You They Won't Play This Song on the Radio"?
He might have.
The one with all the silly bleeped out words.
And this is another one. He's not saying he's not betting they won't play it, but he's saying if they do, it'll cost $250,000 because he says a lot of words in there that the FCC doesn't like. And so the fines would be enormous. And there's a hint that in the song that he may already have been fined.
Really?
About something. Not about this song, perhaps.
Well, Howard
about
Stern was
else.
Recently.
Yeah, and he mentions Howard Stern in the song. Yes, he does.
Huh.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well, don't leave the show right now to go see that.
A lot of people.
Do not leave our show right now to go listen to that. But
I will type
URL,
that into the chat log.
Yeah, there we go. It will be in the chat log. Russell will type it in.
Here, I'll give it to you.
That to
Thank
Russell.
you.
So this is a good song, you're saying? Good, funny.
It's funny. Yes, it's in that bouncy, happy Monty Python-esque kind of music where they sing about really horrible things.
Okay. Well, more on the free speech front.
Mm-hmm.
Virtual devils curse internet church. This has been
Virtual devils,
and it's also Britain-related news.
Okay, cool.
The world's first internet church has fallen victim to a plague of virtual demons, some of whom have been logging on as Satan and unleashing strings of expletives during sermons. The Church of Fools was launched last week as a unique chance. Yeah, the Church of Fools.
No, it's apparently a reference to some biblical verse about a ship of fools.
I know. It's also a reference to their cluelessness.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
And they're always saying atheists are fools because of a Bible verse.
Right.
So are they calling themselves atheists? Or are they a different brand of fool?
Who knows?
Or is this something to do with the Motley Fools?
I don't think so.
Describe what's happening.
Launched last week as a unique chance for Christians to worship interactively. Worship interactively. Isn't it? Where's all this nonsense about praying in your closet gone?
I don't know. It's got to be interactive now.
By choosing a 3D animated character who could kneel, sing hymns, talk to others, hear a sermon, or shout hallelujah. And I bet that's not too annoying.
I visited this this site.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yes, and your handle was Satan?
No, actually, I was not able to get a handle because when I logged in, they said there are too many people in the church, so it basically logged me in as a ghost character.
Oh.
They didn't give me a name. I couldn't talk to anybody. And there were about 24 people in the church. So I was like, these servers are not set up to handle... I mean, I would bet that there were
servers are not robust.
hundreds of times as many ghosts as people in there.
Right.
But you couldn't see any of them. So these guys were not ready for big stories to come out about them and have people all over the world coming there. But I also... I checked out their rules site. There was a page that said rules of conduct because thanks to this Satan incident, which, have you finished this yet?
No.
Oh, well, why don't you go on with that and then I'll talk about the rules.
The site attracts between 5,000 and 10,000 worshippers daily. That's pre-news story. And those who log on can also give money to a collection plate via mobile phone.
Oh, gosh.
So there's the purpose. But the temptation to misbehave has proved too much for some.
Oh,
no,
really?
Excuse me. I would not be surprised if it's not a temptation to misbehave, but rather a burning desire to tell Christians exactly what we think about them. We have had problems from a small number of worshippers, which happens in any internet chat room. Why are they calling those people worshippers? They're clearly not worshippers. I don't want to go there and shout expletives in their church and then be called a worshipper.
Right. Well, we don't know if they're atheists.
But they're not worshippers.
Well, they may be worshiping Satan. We don't know.
Okay, good point. But we don't know.
We don't know.
Emphasis on we don't know. Therefore, they should, visitors. Why didn't they just say visitors? There's that assumption again that everybody's a Christian.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There couldn't be non-Christians coming in and shouting expletives. It must be them. Which is hilarious. Which happens in any internet chat room, and we are bothered about individual harassment, which we are taking seriously, said the site's deputy director, Stephen.
Oh, I forgot to mention that when I visited as a ghost, there was a guy kneeling at the altar, and his name was Reverend Ned Flanders.
There's another explanation.
Were you a holy ghost, by the way?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It could be that the site's being visited by a bunch of Tourette's sufferers.
Tourette's typists.
Yes.
I can't control my fingers.
And actually, they're complaining about a bunch of handicapped people.
We're increasing security day by day to eliminate the disruptive behavior, such as the profanity. But we're determined to carry on. At least we're not preaching to the converted, he added. But you just said you were, because you called them worshippers.
Right.
Get your story straight, idiot. The church, sponsored by the Methodist Church, but organized by the multi-denominational Ship of Fools Project, said it had removed a shout function where people could speak to the whole congregation. Some were using it to hurl abuse or yell, "Satan loves you."
This is a perfect example of why people setting up big websites like this need to consult with game designers. Because we already know this kind of crap goes on.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We know what exploits are.
I know a perfect...
Dennis and
I know a perfect way to deal with this. Add player killing to your church.
That'll solve all your problems.
Dennis and I, by the way, both are in the online games industry. We work at a company called TKO Software. And you can find out about our game at www.ashenempires.com. Just a little plug in there. Since there's no rule, it says we can't promote our own work.
But I think that game designers should be used in other facets of society.
Of course
we know we are directly exposed to human nature, the worst and the best.
Much of my religion criticism is driven by my understanding of game design. Right? Like the whole, Ten Commandments thing. Those are not good rules to run your game.
No, those are terrible game design.
If you were a god and you were setting up a world and what you wanted was for your players to, all get along and stuff, you wouldn't do that by making the rules be those 10 things.
Right.
Because it doesn't work. right? Or another way to look at it is, whatever the rules are, right, that tells you how the game is supposed to be played. Well, and those rules, that set of rules, does not jive with the description on the box of what this game is supposed to be about.
Well, I have the rules of this online church here.
The rules. How many do they have? Do they have 10?
No, they have 6. But actually, their message boards have a kind of humorous 10 Commandments page.
Okay.
But some of the rules of the online church are: don't become a distraction. Church historians confirm that church has always been home to a little whispering, but if you only want to chat, there are better places and times for it than during worship. Don't put on a floor show. Don't walk around at front during services. Wander behind the altar. Don't bring your arguments to worship. Now, basically...
What is that? All the interactivity is gone.
Right.
Where's the interactivity?
So I'm wondering, what's the point of this? I mean, if they just want you to sit quietly and hear a sermon,
and shout
why don't they just
when you're supposed to?
Why don't they just post the sermon online and let me read it?
Right.
There wasn't a sermon going on when I was there.
When you log in, why don't why doesn't your connection go to some God bot that is just a little well-behaved worshiper who walks around, takes his seat in the pews, picks up the hymnal, sings along with everyone, but your point of view is attached to him, so that's you. You have no freedom to do anything else already. Why pretend that it's interactive?
Perhaps they want to grant you free will.
Yeah.
I've already got free will. Why am I coming to your church?
The pulpit, altar, and lectern areas will be closed to the public after some worshippers walked their animated character into those areas during sermons. It's right here in the story. But the strongest measure against the unruly will be the online equivalent of damnation. Wardens will be able to smite the wicked by instantly logging them out of the church if they misbehave.
Wardens. I like that. It's a good name.
In a way, we are facing the same problems faced by the first preachers who met resistance when they moved into new communities, said Goddard.
No, that would be stakes and big fires.
But the church has always expanded into new communities.
Lions.
And
first Christians.
And some of those are to be found in cyberspace now, so we are determined to carry on.
Another impression.
History.
That's right. They're not welcome, but they're going to go there anyway.
Right. So we'll burn them at the stake. We'll send them to damnation.
Well, to be fair, logging people off of your church is...
Well, that's fun. That's fun.
It's not the equivalent of eternal torture.
No, but it is
online games.
But it's ironic.
Out of a church.
But it is ironic that they...
But online games do that too. Sorry.
Well, yeah, so what?
You're right, Russell.
They don't claim to be morally superior.
You're right, Russell. Kicking people out of your online church is not the same as eternal damnation, which makes it extremely interesting that damnation is used as an analogy for that. Because what that tells me is that the person writing this article thinks that eternal torture is no worse than being kicked out of a chat room. So, interesting. If anybody is listening to our show would like to visit this online church and see if they can find their way around its draconic restrictions, the website is www.shipoffools.com.
/church is where the church is located.
/church. Well, you can find... I got as far as finding that there's a link to it.
I would also like to say, though, that I visited their message boards as well. And this being a Christian group, I expected it to be full of extremely right-wing, Protestant types. But I had failed to count on the fact that this was actually located in England. And I was astounded at the tone that I found on the message boards. It was, people who expressed a strong opinion were generally speaking from a position that would be considered incredibly liberal in the U.S. a lot of people were struck me as agnostics, but they weren't being attacked by the church members. In fact, the main, whatever he was, reverend guy who was in charge of the church was frequently writing a whole lot of liberal stuff, often expressing outrage at what's going on in the U.S. right now, and being friendly to unbelievers. So,
well, that's all
it's
fine.
very different in England.
That's all fine. But you know me, liberal Christians drive me even crazier than fundamentalists. Because most fundamentalists, you hear like 6 words out of their mouth and you just know that they're insane. Right? That they're creepy, uneducated morons.
Irrational. Yeah.
Liberal Christians, it drives me crazy that so much of what they say is not that insane, but they still adhere to this belief system built around the premise of the fall of man, and thus the premise that if you're not a Christian, if you haven't got special dispensation from their deity, then you deserve to be tortured forever.
Right.
I cannot square those two in my mind. You know what I'm saying? That to me seems like the place where somebody needs to be smacked upside the head. It's not so much fundamentalists. They're, in my view, pretty much lost causes. But most people are only able to get to that point because there's a much bigger majority of Christians who aren't that overtly nuts. Yet they're part of this religion that maintains the basic storyline, which is all human beings are worthless pieces of scum who deserve to be eternally tortured.
Some don't believe in a hell.
Then they haven't read their book.
Yeah, that's true.
Or if it's not hell, however we're going to define it. But if they believe that all human beings are fallen, that is Genesis, right? If they believe all human beings are, if they don't believe all human beings are fallen, there is no point to Christianity.
Right. Well, every Christian,
Christianity is all about,
who's read the Bible has to be a salad bar Christian. Sure. There's no alternative.
Sure.
My point is,
I don't care.
Some of it,
my point is, I don't care if you aren't eating the tomatoes on the salad bar. Right. The fact is, the fact that you're taking your business to that salad bar, and there are other people that eat the tomatoes, means your money is going toward the business of feeding them other people the tomatoes.
Right.
I don't care.
Good point.
Right? If you recognize that. Now, if it was like arsenic, here's a salad bar with arsenic. I don't care if you're not eating any, but if you're paying money to the organization that's running the arsenic salad bar, you are supporting putting arsenic out there in front of other customers.
You may be liberal, but you're helping the fundies.
Yeah. If you're going to be liberal, understand and follow through. That's
there's always Christians, in quotes, like Thomas Jefferson, who explicitly said, I'm a Christian. I think that Jesus Christ was a great guy. And then he wrote his, Jefferson Bible, which basically cut out all the nonsense, which is 90% of it. Mm-hmm. And included the things that he thinks Jesus really said, and he said, I agree with this stuff, so I'm a follower of Christ.
Yeah, I would tell Jefferson, no, you're not a Christian. Or please don't use that word. That's like physicists using the word God when what they really mean is, with all the wacky stuff the universe does and natural law does. Please don't use that word. Because that word is in common usage about a guy who was a holy man of this religion that had these premises. And if you don't buy the premises, please don't pretend that you're part of that. Then what you're doing, I think, is you're just labeling yourself that in order to get, kudos from the other people in our culture who really do buy into it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get my respect for turning to them for support. Russell, would you like to do a news story?
I would love to do a news story. Already. This is a news story about what the religious right knows of as the evil ACLU that's always stomping on the rights of poor, helpless Christians.
So how are they destroying Christianity now?
They are destroying Christianity by, A school district agreed in Michigan as part of a legal settlement to apologize to a high school valedictorian whose yearbook quote was removed because it was a Bible verse. Abby Moeller, a 2001 graduate, was among students asked to offer their thoughts for Stevenson High School's yearbook. Her entry included the phrase, Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." School officials told Moeller at the time that her quote was deleted because of its religious nature. The Michigan chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union announced the settlement Tuesday. Utica Community Schools officials declined to comment. The ACLU said that under the terms of the settlement, the school district agreed to place a sticker with Moeller's original entry in copies of the yearbook on file at the high school, ordered current yearbook staff to not censor other religious or political speech, to train its staff on free speech and religious freedom issues, and to write Moeller a letter of regret.
All right.
There's the ACLU trampling all over the rights of Christians.
That's right. That's great. That is a free speech. That is a free expression issue there. They did a good job.
I don't have a lot to say about that one.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey?
I think that person needs to be smacked upside the head. But
that's their opinion.
I guess
it's not the school's business to smack them.
There's an interesting line there, right? Where if that had been a teacher wanting to put that quote in the yearbook,
right? No,
that would have been wrong,
right?
But because it's a student, it's okay. Because in the case of the teacher, they are a spokesperson for the government.
Yeah, right.
But the student isn't.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds fine.
So.
Interesting.
Defend the Christian's right to free speech. The ACLU is so evil.
Want to hear about evil Buddhists trampling free speech?
Sure. What have those nasty Buddhists done lately?
What have they stepped in this time?
Priests at one of Japan's most famous temples have taken steps to block the sale of a sweet marketed as snot from the nose of the great Buddha.
Ah.
I saw a picture of this. It's a little cellophane package
with
these. The picture was not large, so it was hard to tell what the candies actually looked like, but it's some kind of confection thing in there. And on the packaging, there was a picture of the Buddha serenely sitting there with his finger up his nose.
Cool.
They have prevented the name being registered as a trademark at the patent office, but have been unable to stop vendors selling the sweets to hordes of tourists who flock to see the giant Buddha in the ancient capital Nara in western Japan. Yamamoto Busan, the company that launched the sweets 3 years ago, has said that in a recession, a product name needs to make a strong impact. A spokesman said some employees had doubts about the name, so it was decided to attach the ultra-polite suffix sama to the Buddha's name. So it's Buddha Sama. When his name is spelled. So without that, it would be snot from the nose of the Buddha instead of the great Buddha.
Great snot, I'm sure.
But the sweet's packaging shows an irreverent picture of Buddha picking his nose. Local media has suggested that the sweet is popular because the people of Western Japan have an earthy sense of humor, which other Japanese often find coarse. Another famous Nara sweet is called deer droppings. Most Japanese do not adhere strongly to any single set of religious beliefs, typically marrying in Christian services, holding Buddhist funerals, and attending festivals at Shinto shrines. Buddhists objecting to the sweet on the ground of profanity seem to be outnumbered by Japanese put off by the thought of eating something named after snot.
But they happily drink Pocari Sweat. So.
Now, we polled my stepdaughter, who was 11, right before the show.
She said she wouldn't eat it.
She said she would not eat it, which surprised me, actually, because I do believe I've seen her buying, like, lollipops with like, pretend bugs inside.
Right. Well, now, what's the
I would think that's appealing to that age range.
They sell the Harry Potter candies, don't they?
Right.
Right.
Those are nasty.
Earwax flavored jelly beans.
Yeah.
I guess.
Birdie Bots every flavor beans.
Yeah. Earwax.
Whee! We're having fun now. So, Russell, do another one.
Okay.
With a finger up his nose.
Something close to home here in Austin.
Yeah.
Unitarian Universalists have for decades presided over births, marriages, and memorials. The church operates in every state with more than 5,000 members in Texas alone. But according to the Office of Texas Comptroller Carol Keaton Strayhorn, a Denison Unitarian church isn't really a religious organization, at least for tax purposes.
What?
Its reasoning? The organization does not have one system of belief. Never before.
The system of belief.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was a
requirement.
Was a requirement.
Never before, not in this state or any other, has a government agency denied Unitarians tax-exempt status because of the group's religious philosophy, church officials say. Strayhorn's ruling clearly infringes upon religious liberties, says Dan Althoff, board president for the Denison congregation that was rejected for tax exemption by the comptroller's office. I was surprised and shocked, because the Unitarian Church in the United States has a very long history, said Althoff, who notes that father and son presidents John Adams and John Quincy Adams were both Unitarians. His church is just one of several Unitarian congregations in North Texas, including churches in Fort Worth, Arlington, and South Lake.
And Austin. There's one in Austin.
No amount of shameless behavior is beyond Christians. They should know that.
Right.
So I don't get it.
You don't get it.
I don't get it. What is the objection? That they don't have a
They
single...
don't have one system of belief. I guess then...
I think we should embrace
Christians.
I think we should
embrace that.
I remember when the Buddhist temple that was built here in Austin was being denied tax-exempt status because they didn't worship a single supreme being.
Mm-hmm.
This is a different spin on what the rule is. My understanding is that in the state constitution, religion is defined as a tax-exempt religious organization is defined as one that has a single supreme being.
Yeah.
But the Buddhists were given an exemption. They were just gone. They went ahead and let them in, right? But so this is a whole new angle. Like, because only some Unitarians are going to say they believe in a God, we won't let them in. What difference does that make? Does that article go on to say further things? I remember reading other versions of this where they argued...
Questions about the issue were referred to Jesse Ansira, the comptroller's top lawyer, who said Strayhorn has applied a consistent standard and then stuck to it. For any organization to qualify as a religion, members must have simply a belief in God or gods or a higher power, he said.
Right.
We have got to apply a test and use some objective standards, Ansira said. We're not using the test to deny the exemptions for a particular group because we like them or don't like them. Well, they say that, but, it seems that whenever any one of these tests is made up, it just happens to favor all Christian groups, and the groups that it doesn't favor happen not to be Christian groups.
Yeah, but the other thing is, there is more, Russell, in that story. Please read the next couple of paragraphs.
Okay. Since Strayhorn took over in January 1999, the Comptroller's Office has denied religious tax-exempt status to 17 groups and granted them to more than 1,000, according to records obtained by the Star-Telegram. Although there are exceptions, the lion's share of approvals have gone to groups that appear to have relatively traditional faiths, records show. But of the denials, at least a fourth include less traditional groups, the records show. In addition to the Denison Unitarian Church, the rejected groups included Carrollton Group of Atheists and Agnostics, a New Age group in Bastrop, and the Whispering Star Clan Temple of Ancient Wisdom, an organization of witches in Copperas Cove.
Wow.
Some of the denials occurred because of missing paperwork or other problems, according to the Comptroller's office. A few, like the denial for the New Age group and the Witches group, were denied because their services were closed to the public, according to documents. What about Mormons?
I don't know. Are their services closed to the public?
I think so. I mean, when I lived in San Diego, they were setting up this huge Mormon temple, and no one's allowed inside it unless they're confirmed Mormons.
Okay.
Some of the denials, but the denials of the Red River Unitarian Universalist Church in Denison and the North Texas Church of Free Thought in Carrollton, whom we have several friends as members, yes,
yep,
as well as an earlier denial by Sharp for the Ethical Culture Fellowship of Austin, were ordered because the organizations did not mandate belief in a supreme being. The disputed tax dollars don't amount to much, but the comptroller has taken a stand on principle, Ansira said.
Principle.
The issue as a whole is, do you want to open up a system where there can be abuse or fraud, or where any group can proclaim itself to be a religious organization and take advantage of the exception, he said.
Well, you know. Okay, that's the bit I wanted to get to. Okay. I mean, in our last episode, 2 weeks ago, I was ranting about the legal use of marijuana by Rastafarians in their religious rituals, right? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was arguing we shouldn't make an exception for religious organizations on issues where it's otherwise illegal.
Right.
Right. This is sort of the other side of that coin. Because what they're saying here is here is not an illegal thing. There's
another Christian in the chat room.
Yeah, we'll talk to him in a minute.
Okay.
This is a special perk for religion.
Right.
Right? And they're trying to say here, well, we didn't set up these rules to exclude anybody. We're setting up these rules because we can't just be letting anybody walk in the door and say they're a religion and get a tax exemption. So we're sticking by an interpretation that is consistent. The problem is, why is this there in the first place? Right? Why does the tax exemption exist in the first place? If it is not to foster religion in general, then it is by its very nature biased in favor of the subset of religions that it is granted to. And even if it's not just for that subset of religions, even if it's for all religion, it's bias in favor of religion in general.
Right.
See? So...
And what does belief in God have to do with an exemption of taxes anyway?
Well, religion is viewed in our culture as a positive thing. It's a thing you want to have. I agree. Right? Seems to me there should be a parallel, rationalist society tax exemption.
Yeah.
If it's going to be like that. But then, I don't necessarily want the government
deciding what's rational.
Yeah, doing tests on people to determine whether they're rational or not. I'm not sure that would be a good idea.
No.
So,
but what was the excuse they gave? How did they word that?
That it's
a single.
We have to apply a test.
Well, first it says a single
does
system of belief.
Does not have one system of belief.
Not have one system of belief. But Christians don't have one system of belief. Yeah, there's a million fucking schisms.
But each individual denomination does. I know. I know.
If I take it
fair
literally,
point. That's a fair
have to
point.
kick out all the
They're
Christians.
clearly not doing that. And frankly,
They have to call themselves something else.
atheism is a single system of belief. Right?
Right.
It's a pretty damn skimpy system where all there is there's this one piece of info, you don't believe in any gods. But that is a single thing.
Right.
That is a badly worded statement.
Yes,
the later statement in the article where you have to have a god or gods. Right. That is closer to what the law actually reads.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big problem with making churches tax exempt. Which is that it puts the government in the business of deciding what's a religion and what's not.
We can't allow just anyone in. Oh, those words are horrible.
Right. Because
what
then
do you mean?
that's discrimination. As soon as you're
Obviously
deciding
discrimination.
But if the law was written to say, look, we want to give these kinds of organizations tax exemption because we think it's good for our society to have that and we want to foster it, then they could be specific about what kinds of things they wanted, and then we can look at it.
Now here's another thing. The wording I've heard in that story indicates that a polytheistic religion would not pass.
No, God or gods.
Gods, yes.
Would.
Or a higher power, even.
God or gods or higher power.
I guess Alcoholics Anonymous.
It would.
Okay.
It would. But Buddhists, Buddhism not being about a god, right? The Buddhists had a problem, but they got let in by the back door, right? Yes.
Because they're big.
Well, yeah, it's like
little stuff can't do it.
They're a big religion, right? There's no way that they could be denied being a religion by the Texas state government, so they had to bear it down. But really, that applies to Universalists too, right?
Yeah.
Unitarian Universalists.
But they don't have as much resources as the Buddhists.
I guess I don't know that the Buddhists have more resources in Texas than Unitarians do. Worldwide, but here, to where they can actually fight the law, I'm not sure there's that big of a difference. I think it's that the average man on the street recognizes that Buddhism is a frickin' religion, right? If the government tries to deny the Buddhists the tax exemption, they're just going to get laughed at. But Unitarianism has sort of dwindled to where it's now this relatively minor, off-to-the-side thing a lot of people aren't terribly aware of. And so they feel they can get away with it.
Were the Branch Davidians?
Did they get tax exempt status? I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question.
Didn't they believe David Koresh was a higher power?
Yeah, that's right.
Not only that, they could prove he existed.
Yeah.
Plus, now let's get out. But God, there's so many layers to this particular onion of a story. So they're arguing there have to be consistent standards, a single set of standards consistently applied so that not just anybody can walk in off the street and get the tax exemption. But what's the standard that they want to apply? Belief in a god or gods or a higher power? Anybody can walk in off the street and say they've got that. How are you going to prove they don't?
Right, you have to take
So how does that exclude anybody?
You have to take
we could have an atheist organization that said, for membership in our atheist organization, you got to say you believe in a god. When asked,
there you go.
Right? And then we could walk in and say, we all say we believe in a god. Give us the tax exemption. That's a ridiculous standard in the first place.
Right, a rule not designed by a game designer.
Well, yeah.
It's rife for exploitation.
I tend to agree.
If we, in the Atheist Community of Austin, added to our Constitution, we all believe in gods, and then in parentheses, not really, we're just putting this so we can get tax-exempt status.
Yeah.
It would nevertheless be in the Constitution, right? I mean, it would say, yes, we all believe in gods.
You could even phrase it as, we profess a belief in God.
Fine.
Yeah, so we're all just lying a little bit.
We would want to call ourselves atheists, so that would raise red flags. They would be understandably skeptical. But a group of us could go off, start a brand new organization that's, we worship the invisible pink unicorn.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
And insist on tax-exempt status for the Church of the IPU. And by this single standard consistently applied, they'd have to give us tax-exempt status.
Sure.
What, are they going to mind read everybody to make sure that they actually really
believe what they claim?
That's nonsense. Nonsense. Well,
just an update on the chat room. Our fundie is named Lutuk, and he's sitting there saying, the words separation of church and state don't appear in the Constitution anywhere.
Do we know if this guy is listening to the show? Or is he just in the chat room?
I don't know. Lutuk, are you listening to the show?
Yeah.
Somebody sent him a link, but he seemed unable to understand how to get it to play. So, I don't know.
All right. We'll get back to that if we find out. So, is that enough news for now? I got something else, like a different direction I want to take the show in right now.
Let me see what else I've got.
Can we have news after?
Well, I think we should have your little comedy bit first. Go ahead and do yours.
Do I get to do that one?
Yeah, do that now.
Could you hand me my page? Your drink is resting on it.
You have to give Dennis his news back.
Oh,
and rustle your papers.
Oh, yeah. And this is awesome. All right. Now, it reads like a urban legend, but it's in The Sun, Ananova, News 24, and WorldNet Daily. Now, I have no idea how reliable these news services are, but here's the story. Take it as you will. A couple who went to a fertility clinic after 8 years of marriage to find out why they could not have kids were shocked to find out they needed to have sex. The German couple...
Who would have thought?
The German couple attended the University Clinic of Lübeck and had a series of examinations, which showed they were both fertile. Website News24.com reported. A clinic spokesman said, when we asked them how often they had sex, they looked blank and said, "What do you mean?" We're not talking retarded people here, but a couple who were brought up in a religious environment who were simply unaware, after 8 years of marriage, of the physical requirements necessary to procreate. The 30-year-old wife and her 36-year-old husband are now being given sex therapy lessons while the university clinic undertakes a study to try to find out if there are more couples with a similar lack of sex education.
No, please. Now, if we have anybody from Germany listening to our show, please, or if anybody listening to our show can contact these people, please, before it's too late, stop. Do not find the couples that have been raised in religious environments and therefore don't know how to procreate. Let them go ahead and not procreate. Please, I beg you.
Well, are they victims?
Yes. Those would be victims of the lack of pornography.
It's like, when I read this, I said, wait a minute, these are the perfect fundies.
They're definitely getting into heaven. I'll tell you that right now.
That's right.
No, anybody...
It's a self-correcting problem.
Anybody, yeah. And that's like, we don't have a lot of Quakers around anymore either, do we?
No.
I say let them go. Let them go. They're happy.
Oh, my God.
In fact, we should put them on a pedestal and make them a shining example for all fundamentalist idiots to follow.
People don't want there to be a test for whether you or not you should have children. But guess what? Circumstance imposes one. You can't get away from it.
Have we gotten any word on whether our chat room fundie is listening?
No, he's too busy trying to make fun of people who think he's a lunatic.
Wow.
Okay, well.
All right, so let's take the show in a different
Tune
direction
into
now.
the chat log.
Oh, my God. People who don't know...
Well, we had the first gay marriages in Massachusetts a couple weeks ago, and in other news, the Earth did not crash into the sun, and it didn't rain fire.
Was it supposed to?
Probably.
Oh, because of the gay marriage.
Because of the gay marriage, yeah.
Gay marriage.
Okay, go ahead.
Our country is ruined instantly.
Since this marriage thing is a bit old, I printed a more recent story giving an update on how it's going. Legal focus of Massachusetts gay marriage debate shifts to non-residents. Boston, the Romney administration has demanded copies of all marriage applications issued to gay couples in Provincetown, Somerville, Springfield, and Worcester, or however they pronounce it in Boston.
I think that's Worcester.
4 municipalities that openly defied the government's residency requirement for same-sex marriage. A day after cities and towns across the state granted the nation's first gay marriage licenses, Judy Goldberg, a top administration lawyer, called all 4 communities Tuesday to request immediate copies of the documents, perhaps signaling the next front in the legal battle over the same-sex marriage. They've singled out only the select few that announced a policy contrary to the governor's interpretation, Provincetown town manager Keith Bergman said. This is the first step toward something, that's for sure. After several unsuccessful attempts to delay Monday's court-ordered legalization of gay marriage, Governor Mitt Romney informed city and town clerks that a 1913 statute barred them from issuing marriage licenses to out-of-state residents who have no plans to move to Massachusetts. Well, you know, there's another loophole that you can take advantage of. You know, declare that you plan to move to Massachusetts and then change your mind.
But boy, it just
1913,
like one of those things that you look back on, you know, decades later and go, boy, these bigots trying to keep this from happening. You know, it's like, you know, you get that kind of treatment in the textbooks. You know, it's like
right.
You know, everybody in the South was a bigot. You know, back when they were denying blacks their rights and stuff.
Abolition of slavery, votes for women. All these things that have been opposed on religious grounds and supported by some people on religious grounds, but generally supported by more,
opposed more.
Supported more by non-religionists.
And eventually it becomes the accepted norm.
Yeah.
And they're just fighting against it tooth and nail, and they're going to lose.
Right. Right, until they get to the point where they just can't keep opposing it without being laughed out of town.
Right, except then you get a new generation coming in who doesn't remember that was the religious position, and so they assume it's always been the way it is.
Right.
It's just like
slavery is bad. It's always been bad.
The religion adapts and continues to exist. I know
people who now oppose evolution, for example, don't remember that the big church issue was once that you have to oppose the idea that the Earth goes around the sun. And if you say, well, that's just what the church did back then, they give you blank looks and they say, well, you know, there was some weirdos a long time ago. It has nothing to do with us.
Yes, it does.
That was man, not God. I got news for you, dude. It's all man.
I don't have anything to do with it, but, for some reason I do have something to do with what Adam and Eve did.
Is that it, Russell?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, I'm holding in my hands the latest issue of Free Inquiry magazine. Published by the Council for Secular Humanism, cool guys. They also run the Center for Inquiry. They publish Skeptical Inquirer. They run the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. Yes, Dennis?
Oh, can I mention one thing?
Yeah.
The mass suicide of skeptics.
Oh, sure. Is that
real short?
That's not in this one.
No, it's not in that one.
No, that was in
the
Skeptical Inquirer.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. There was a great story in Canada.
No, Belgium.
Belgium? Okay, Belgium.
I read that much in the article.
The insurance companies there allowed homeopathic. We're allowed to cover like 20% of homeopathic treatments now. And so the skeptical members of the Belgian Society realized that, well, you know, our diatribes aren't really doing much good. let's stage a mass suicide for publicity.
Yeah.
And so they worked up a bunch of suicide poisons. They were going to drink poisons.
Yeah.
Arsenic, a whole bunch of stuff. Hemlock and belladonna, whatever.
Right.
Deadly nightshade, whatever. And they worked up homeopathic preparations
of these poisons. Now, quickly for our listeners who have been living under a rock and do not know what this homeopathy bullshit is all about.
Right.
Give us a quick...
Okay. Well, water remembers what's been in it. And so if you have a cure if you have a medicine, and you put it in water and you dilute it again and again and again, it becomes more and more powerful because the water remembers better the more dilute it is.
I'm giving you a blank stare.
Well,
okay.
Maybe you have a better description.
That's it.
That's pretty much it.
I would slightly amend that to say, underlying that all, it's not that, strangely, it's not quite that simple. Excuse me. At least the original premise of homeopathy was this, kind of strangely almost makes sense notion that if somebody is, say, vomiting,
right,
you give them tiny amounts of a thing that will make them vomit in order to build up a resistance. It's sort of, there is a echo of an entirely valid medical procedure, medical approach with what's the word I'm looking for? When you give somebody small amounts of a thing that causes a disease, so their built body,
like
a
vaccine.
Thank you. For some reason, that word just left my brain.
Yeah.
Vaccines, right?
Right.
That's valid. Very, very early on, there was some of that idea that, so we'll take not a medicine, but a thing that will make you vomit, and we'll dilute it so it's very, 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 very weak, and then give it to you.
Right.
Now, all this bullshit about water remembering what's in it has come up much more recently.
Yeah,
as scientists have looked at homeopathy and said, based on how often you've diluted this, there's probably not a single molecule of the active ingredient in it anymore. And so they had to make up all this crap about how the water has this power to remember what substances used to be in it.
Yeah.
Okay,
they dilute it to the point, they often dilute it to the point where the chances of there being a molecule of the substance in it are like, they compare it to the number of molecules in the earth. And say, no, you diluted it beyond that point. There's
like if you were looking for one particular molecule in the earth.
Right.
And you kept passing the material of the earth through your body until you found that one molecule. All right. Okay, so they made up these homeopathic poisons.
They made their statement, and in front of the press, they drank their concoction, which should have instantly killed them. But their suicide attempt failed.
That's brilliant. And that was in Skeptical Inquirer?
Yeah.
Skeptical Inquirer. Okay, so I have in my hands Free Inquiry, another magazine from the Council for Secular Humanism. And the cover story is Upgrading Humanity, Are People Obsolete? And it lists 4 different authors who have written articles in this issue about not humanism, but transhumanism, which is something I've been into for a while, and it was with some trepidation that I picked up this magazine because, with like the flack that we got about Brights, it seems like every time another subgroup of us comes up with a new term, that suddenly we're instantly all at each other's throats.
Right. Right.
Attacking the new group for having a dumb term, and the new group, basically try to justify its existence by attacking the old terms. Yada, 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 yada. So I was very concerned that humanists would look at transhumanists, and the reaction would be hostile.
Right.
I haven't read all 4 articles yet, but the sense that I'm getting is of cautious enthusiasm.
Good.
Just to fill our listeners in on what transhumanism is, I will read a paragraph from Nick Bostrom, a young philosopher at Oxford and a leading transhumanist. This is quoted in the article "The New Perfectionism" by Austin Dacey in this magazine. It's the first article on the topic. Transhumanists view human nature as a work in progress, a half-baked beginning that we can learn to remold in desirable ways. Current humanity need not be the end point of evolution. Transhumanists hope that by responsible use of science, technology, and other rational means, we shall eventually manage to become post-human, beings with vastly greater capabilities than present human beings have.
Yeah.
So, now Dennis is also a transhumanist, are you not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Russell, you and I haven't really talked about transhumanism that much. Other than that, I bring it up a lot in our Atheist Community of Austin discussion.
I think it's a little weird, but I have nothing against it.
But
if you can make me live forever, I'm for it.
That's part. Well, that's one aspect.
Physical immortality is a big part of transhumanism.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, vastly extended expected lifespan is a big goal. Yep. But not only that, there's... to me, it seems like a natural outgrowth of humanism and of evolution. Because, the story of the squids, they got better eyeballs than us?
Yeah.
Well, what is all this crap about there's better eyeballs than we got? Once you've recognized that there's versions of the same equipment that we have that are superior, and that this has all happened within the bounds of natural law,
right?
Why should we be content with the less, efficient eyes, for example, right?
Absolutely.
And not just that. I mean, once you have made that step, once you have recognized that there's room for improvement, that's where transhumanism comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, wait a minute. Why just eyes? Why not, better bones? Why not better skin? Why not better lungs? What are we doing?
Right.
Taking in raw, meat and vegetable matter and processing it chemically to get our energy in the first place, and why do we have to, deal with our limited brain capacity? Why don't we address these problems technologically, right?
Right. And we already are.
And it's interesting because from one end you get this kind of thinking, and from the other end of the spectrum you get stuff like, these dark these dark new, what's the word I'm looking for? Cyberpunk views of the future that were largely negative and cautionary at first.
Right.
And these two views are sort of coming together, and people are saying, well, having cyber implants is not necessarily a bad thing, right? There's a lot of potential there. So, I don't know where else I'm going with this. I would like to urge everyone to pick up this copy of this issue of Free Inquiry. It is
what month is it?
It is the June and July 2004 issue of Free Inquiry.
My view is that we're all already transhuman.
I'm wearing a watch right now.
Right.
I no longer have to rely on training myself to figure out what time it is.
When man made the first wheel, he saw, and expanded his capability to move himself and stuff beyond his normal walking.
Yeah.
Well, he's transhuman at that point.
Yeah.
He's improved his ability to do stuff.
Yes.
And so
anybody that's
the only thing that stands in the way is the ickiness of actually putting stuff in your body. Is the only thing that's really holding back, the technology that they're looking at of, improving your brain or improving, your muscles or improving your bones. It's the ickiness of putting stuff in your body, but it's no different than a wheel. It's no different than a lever, than a gear. It's all
right.
All the same.
Now, relatively rational people who have a problem with transhumanism will argue that what we got now is the result of millions and millions of years of natural selection.
Yeah.
Right? It's carefully fine-tuned and balanced and internally consistent and, working and so on. And that, things that nature produces like that tend to be more reliant. I'm saying this in a way more calm and level-headed way than they do. But the things that nature produces tend to be more resilient and more reliable than things that man makes.
Yeah, well, they're squidgy, yeah.
And I'm not sure that's necessarily true. And to whatever extent that's true, it is a matter of, the current state of affairs. Because cars break down a lot less frequently now than they did when we started making them. Technology, our ability to make and maintain reliable technological things grows over time. So I'm not swayed by that argument, right? Certainly, I don't want a current IBM PC strapped to my body with wires going into my head. No. Now, obviously, that wouldn't work.
It's not there yet.
It's not there yet, but we're moving in the direction of that. And now, while we still have some show left, I did bring in some stuff to talk about that isn't really directly religion related or atheism related. This is technology. Can we talk about this? Okay. You guys interested?
Sure.
We can talk about
we can talk about anything.
Cool stuff.
Just an update.
Just
an update. Lou Tuck is now arguing that the media is liberal.
Like Fox News is so liberal. Yeah. Tell me about it.
And they kicked him off once, but he cacked.
They kicked him off?
Yes.
Is there a moderator in there?
There are a couple of moderators, actually.
Okay. Boy. Well, they know what they're doing. World's first stem cell bank opens. Oh yeah, let me bring this back to religion again, right? The whole transhumanism thing.
Oh yeah.
Transhumanism is the goals of transhumanists are pretty much the same set of technologies that are being opposed by religious extremists.
Yep.
Right
Genetic
engineering, stem cells,
nanotechnology.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you can't improve on God's work. You can't fiddle with it. Frankenstein proved that.
Oh,
wait. Frankenstein's fiction. Oh, never mind.
But wait, I gotta set aside the news stories. Let's talk about Frankenstein for a moment.
Okay.
Dennis and I went and saw Van Helsing, which I have to report, those of you who have not seen the film, we're probably going to give some stuff away. I'm sorry. But we have to talk about this now. I have to report that Van Helsing is not nearly as bad as everybody was telling me it was.
No. It's silly. Leave your brain at the door.
It's big and dumb and silly, and it plays very loose with established Universal Studios movie monster lore.
Right.
This is not your father's Dracula or Wolfman or Frankenstein monster. In fact, their Frankenstein monster, early on, you see that he's got, cyber components built into his legs.
Yeah.
Stomping out of the castle. Little puffs of steam coming out of his legs, which is cool. Then he climbs up onto the top of the windmill and is looking out over the crowd, and you see his weird flat-topped head. Well, in this version of the Frankenstein monster, there's these, glowing, pulsating electronic things
that you can see through the window in the top of his skull.
Yeah. So he's a very 21st century high-tech Frankenstein monster. Which is interesting. I mean, it's a natural... I was sort of impressed. That's a natural extension of the original silly thing that they did at Universal Studios, which was put bolts in his neck.
Right.
What the hell were those bolts ever supposed to be for? When you first saw him, it's like, I guess they had to screw his head on to keep it on.
I thought that's what they attached the electrodes to.
In later movies, you saw wires attached to that. Oh, that's how they got the electricity into him. Like, you'd need that to get electricity into him. But the interesting thing from the atheist perspective on this is the stories about this guy, Van Helsing, who is basically a secret agent for the Catholic Church that has this secret spy network that what they do is they fight monsters.
Right.
Right? And it's very, very, very James Bond inspired.
Yeah.
Right?
Even to the inclusion of their, what is it, M?
Q. Yes, they have their guy, their like crazy inventor guy, monk. But Van Helsing is a guy whose job it is to go out and kill these monsters. And strangely, the premise of the film is that he goes out and kills monsters, and people hate him for it. The justification is that...
all they see is the trail of bodies.
All they see is the trail of bodies. It all gets attributed to him. A lot of the monsters, when killed, turn back into people. Yeah. A lot of the monsters are viewed by the superstitious villagers as things you don't want to mess with, or they'll get mad and come and hurt us, right? And so Van Helsing gets all that blame. So the story is about Van Helsing sent to Transylvania to take down Dracula, right?
Yeah.
But it's also about Dracula having enlisted Dr. Frankenstein to build the Frankenstein monster as a test for the ability to create life and prove that God's not the only one who can do it. Because Dracula's got an ulterior motive. He wants to do something with that life-creating power that we won't tell you what it is.
Yeah.
So Van Helsing stops Dracula.
Yeah.
But the church tells him, you also got to destroy Frankenstein. But Van Helsing has this power to, sense evilness. And he doesn't sense any evilness from the Frankenstein monster. In fact, the Frankenstein monster is found in this cave where he's been reading from the Bible. He's he's got a very strange personality. This is an extremely articulate Frankenstein monster, and yet he's also got this kind of kooky behavior that you ought to see the movie.
He's also a strange raving Frankenstein.
Yes, he's a strange raving articulate Frankenstein monster.
It's very neat.
But what struck me, and I guess Dennis too, as we were talking about this coming out of the film, is what this movie is showing us is this fantasy of the church protecting mankind from the monsters, right? The supernatural monsters, and succeeding, right? Being successful at doing that. But also, I didn't mention this yet, it turns out the Catholic Church is kind of somewhat at fault for the existence of many of these supernatural monsters, right? Which the church never admits, but Dracula brings it up.
Right. They find out.
But once the supernatural monsters are vanquished, the church sets its sights on the technological creations and preemptively says, you gotta go kill that so it isn't misused. And Van Helsing is going, it's not evil.
Right. Screw you.
I was really floored because it's a big dumb movie, right? It's, oh my gosh, the sheer silliness of the high wire trapeze stuff that goes on in this film is, enough to make you laugh out loud. But then to find this really interesting and I would say positive depiction of the church as an anti-technology organization was really cool. I liked that a lot. Boy, we're running out of time here. Russell,
we're about
out.
2 minutes.
Let me do one Let me do one quick news story here that has something to do with technology.